What if the most pivotal battle of this war is happening right now, and almost no one is reporting on it? Why are hundreds of soldiers and mercenaries trapped, with no way out, as the world's attention drifts elsewhere? What does it mean for the future of the region when silence, not sirens, fills the airwaves? These are not abstract questions. They are immediate, urgent, and could shape the fate of thousands. At this very moment, over 600 enemy fighters, among them elite troops and foreign mercenaries, are encircled near Konstantinovka, a modest town now transformed into a crucible. Surrounded on all sides, their communications severed and supply lines cut, they are stranded and desperate. The world's major news outlets, however, remain curiously mute. This silence is more than an omission. It is a puzzle, one with high stakes. This situation is no mere blip in the fog of war. Early intelligence and intercepted communications hint that up to 8,000 additional personnel, ranging from regular soldiers to highly specialized battalions and covert foreign operatives, could soon be caught in the same tightening noose. This is not only a local crisis, it is a mirror reflecting how deeply outside powers are entangled in the conflict, raising questions about the very nature of modern proxy warfare. Why are global media outlets ignoring what could be one of the conflict's largest encirclements? Is this lack of coverage accidental, simply the result of chaotic reporting? Or is it a calculated effort to downplay a dramatic setback and shield the fragile alliances that support the opposition? The silence itself demands scrutiny. Missing this story means missing more than a battle. It means missing a potential turning point. Who will control this region next? And how are foreign actors rewriting both the facts and the future? Think of how, in history, the outcome of a single siege, like Stalingrad or Dien Bien Phu, has changed not only the trajectory of a conflict, but the very direction of world politics. We may be witnessing such a moment now, hidden in plain sight. Let's break down what is really happening near Konstantinovka, and why the world cannot afford to look away. To fully grasp the stakes, we must examine the geography, the tactics, and the international interests converging on this embattled area. The details, when pieced together, reveal just how high the risks have become and how the consequences could extend far beyond the immediate battlefield. Picture a small town, Konstantinovka, once a quiet, nondescript settlement. In a matter of weeks, it has become a deadly trap. Imagine hundreds of soldiers from distant cities and foreign lands now caught in its vice. How did they get here? What made this unassuming place so significant that the fate of entire battalions now hangs in the balance? As of now, the outskirts of Konstantinovka are locked down by a relentless, almost mechanical blockade. Russian forces, moving with methodical precision, have deployed artillery batteries, armored columns, and airborne units to choke off every conceivable route of escape. The town's roads, once used for trade and daily life, are now lifelines denied to those within. Inside this tightening ring, over 600 enemy fighters are stranded. Among them are notorious battalions and shadowy foreign mercenaries, their presence confirmed only through whispers and intercepted transmissions. Some reports suggest the true number of trapped personnel could approach 8,000, including covert operatives whose identities are being kept secret by their own governments. This is not hearsay. It is corroborated by the testimonies of captured fighters and the grim evidence found on the battlefield. This sweeping encirclement stands out as one of the largest operations of its kind so far in this conflict. To put this into perspective, consider the historical encirclement at Falaise during World War II, where the collapse of Germany's Western Front was hastened by the trapping of tens of thousands of troops. In Konstantinovka, every passing hour sees the pressure mounting, not just on the isolated troops, but on the political and military leaders who gambled their reputations on holding this ground. Yet, curiously, official channels remain silent. International media sidestep the unfolding disaster, while foreign governments downplay or ignore their role. This silence is deafening. It suggests that a single defeat here could tip the balance of power, shatter fragile alliances, and reveal the true vulnerability of international support for the opposition. Understanding the true magnitude and global reach of this crisis is crucial. What unfolds next could not only decide the fate of Konstantinovka, but reshape the entire region's future. The stakes are as high as they have ever been. But how did so many end up here, on the brink of disaster? To answer that, we must retrace the steps and decisions that led to this moment. Why are contract fighters from Southeast Asia, East Asia, and Europe surrendering on this front? The answer points to a deepening crisis within the enemy's ranks. A crisis of manpower. Traditional recruitment pools have dried up, leaving commanders with little choice but to look outside their own borders. This is not unprecedented. In conflicts from the 30 Years' War to Iraq, desperate militaries have turned to mercenaries when their own reserves ran low. But the risks are always high. Recruiters now snap up anyone willing to sign, regardless of training or experience. Many foreign mercenaries, lured by promises of adventure or lucrative contracts, find themselves woefully unprepared for the brutal reality awaiting them. The presence of captured Vietnamese contract soldiers is stark proof of this desperate international recruitment drive. Their testimonies, often shared in hastily recorded videos, reveal a deeper truth. The opposition's manpower pools are not just depleted, they are exhausted. It is not simply a matter of numbers. It is about sending ill-prepared, poorly motivated men into the line of fire, gambling with bodies rather than battle-ready soldiers. Some of these recruits have never seen combat before. Others were promised easy assignments, only to find themselves in the midst of relentless artillery barrages. The result is predictable. Morale plummets, discipline frays, and units fracture under pressure. Inside the encirclement, the situation grows more desperate by the hour. Enemy units are battered day and night by artillery, while drones buzz overhead, denying them any chance at concealment or surprise. Ammunition supplies are critically low. Logistical lifelines have collapsed. Food, water, and medicine are scarce or non-existent. Morale, already fragile, is now at the breaking point. For many foreign fighters, the promises that lured them, quick pay, adventure, even ideological justification, now ring hollow. Instead of glory or reward, they face relentless bombardment, chaos, and deprivation. Reports from within the encirclement paint a scene of confusion, fear, and growing panic. Several groups have attempted desperate breakout attempts, risking everything to escape. None have succeeded. Under this pressure, command structures are visibly fracturing, with officers losing control over their men. Social media channels, usually tightly controlled, are now filling with raw, unfiltered pleas for help. Panic and despair leak out, bypassing official censorship. Enemy propagandists scramble to project calm, but the cracks are clear to anyone willing to look. Meanwhile, major Western media outlets maintain near-total silence, offering little context or coverage, even as the largest encirclement of the war unfolds. This silence does more than obscure the truth. It shapes global perception, shielding policymakers and the public from the harsh realities on the ground. If this crisis, of manpower, morale, and logistics, remains unresolved, the enemy faces more than a battlefield defeat. The collapse of this pocket risks a domino effect, shaking not only their front lines, but the very legitimacy of their leadership. We have seen this before. In the Vietnam War, the fall of one outpost often led to the unraveling of entire defensive lines, as panic and distrust spread like wildfire. So what happens to those trapped inside? And how could each possible outcome alter the entire course of the conflict? Let us break down the choices now facing the encircled fighters, and examine how each scenario could ripple far beyond this battlefield. One decisive encirclement could alter the fate of hundreds of kilometers of front line. So what unfolds next? We must consider every possibility, from heroic resistance to catastrophic collapse. Now, over 600 enemy troops, including elite assault units and foreign mercenaries, are trapped near Konstantinovka, encircled on every side. With winter closing in and supplies vanishing, desperation festers. The world waits, holding its breath, as three grim outcomes loom: a bloody mass breakout, a chaotic trickle of escapes with mounting casualties, or a sweeping surrender that could echo far beyond this battlefield. A breakout attempt would sap the last reserves of strength, costing countless lives and perhaps failing altogether. The encirclement is tight. History tells us that such attempts, like those at the Corson Pocket or the encirclements around Caen, often result in devastating losses. Attempting to slip away in scattered groups only invites ambush, as local forces are already in place to intercept and destroy any escapees. Hope would wither with each failed attempt. Yet if they surrender en masse, the shock could ripple through enemy lines for hundreds of kilometers, shattering morale and tearing open new corridors for the advancing side. Such a capitulation would not simply be a local defeat, it would be a psychological earthquake. The fall of Singapore in World War II stands as a stark example. An entire garrison's surrender led to a cascade of strategic and political consequences. This is not just a local disaster. The presence of foreign fighters, from across several continents, transforms this standoff into a global flashpoint, casting harsh light on the governments and networks that sent them. International scrutiny sharpens. Official silence only magnifies suspicion about the true scale of the calamity. Western capitals, already grappling with questions about their involvement, now face a reckoning. Should this force be destroyed or captured, months of fortification and planning would collapse overnight. New operational routes would emerge, the balance of power could tip dramatically, and the enemy's ability to mount future resistance would be severely compromised. Each passing hour, as cold and hunger bite deeper, the defender's resistance weakens, a slow unraveling with no relief in sight. The psychological toll of isolation, hunger, and constant bombardment can be as lethal as any bullet or shell. The broader impact could be seismic. This moment might redefine the war's momentum, compelling allies and adversaries alike to reconsider their alliances, redraw their strategies, and perhaps even spark new partnerships or bitter fractures. The ripples could extend to distant capitals, affecting not only military planning, but also diplomatic relations and public support for the war effort. Amid such uncertainty, what warnings and lessons should leaders and observers draw from this unfolding crisis? Are we seeing the limits of coalition warfare, or the beginning of a new, more dangerous phase? What happens here will not stay contained. The next moves could set the tone for the entire region, and the world is watching, even if through a glass darkly. What if true defeat in war is not just about losing territory, but the slow collapse of trust and unity among partners who once stood as allies? The operation near Konstantinovka has done more than capture ground. It has laid bare the fragile underpinnings of an alliance now straining under the weight of secrecy and selective storytelling. Media silence, especially when the largest encirclement of enemy forces to date goes almost unreported, creates a vacuum. Into this silence, misinformation and dangerous assumptions quietly flourish, distorting the world's view of what is really at stake. These omissions are not simply oversights, they are calculated choices. By releasing only fragments of the truth, coalition leaders try to project strength and cohesion, even as the ground beneath their alliance crumbles. The cracks are widening, and with every unspoken fact, the risk grows. Consider the fate of the Warsaw Pact in the late 1980s, when information was withheld, trust eroded, and once mighty alliances unraveled with shocking speed. Perhaps the most revealing development is the enemy's increased reliance on foreign mercenaries. Fighters from across Asia, Europe, and the Americas now fill their ranks. Each one is living proof that the coalition's internal trust and available manpower are wearing thin, more thinly than their rhetoric admits. This dependence on outsiders comes at a steep price. Mercenaries rarely fight for ideals, they fight for contracts. Their loyalty is paper thin, and under pressure they can become liabilities. When these foreign fighters are captured, the resulting silence from command only deepens the sense of crisis and doubt within the coalition. Ignoring warning signs, like shrinking recruitment, chaotic supply lines, or disorder among encircled units, has led to disaster. The sudden encirclement of more than 600 elite and foreign troops did not happen by accident. It was the predictable outcome of leadership refusing to face hard truths. History is replete with such cases: the French collapse in Indochina, the American debacle at Khe Sanh, and the fall of the encircled German Sixth Army at Stalingrad. All were preceded by denial and wishful thinking at the highest levels. In moments like this, transparency and adaptability are not luxuries. They are matters of survival. Denying setbacks or clinging to old narratives only accelerates defeat, on the battlefield and in the fragile trust among allies. Honest communication, even when painful, is the only way to maintain cohesion and adapt to changing circumstances. The lesson from Konstantinovka is clear: underestimating the enemy's resolve, or relying too much on outside help, can shatter even the strongest coalitions. The unraveling has begun, and with it, the costs, in lives, resources, and reputations, grow ever steeper. As the dust settles over Konstantinovka, the true consequences of these choices begin to emerge. What happens next could redefine the conflict, and the alliances that shape its future. Now that you see what is truly at risk, pause and ask: who will decide how this turning point is remembered, and whose version of events will define it? Will it be the silent architects of information control, or those who insist on shining a light into the shadows? In the shadow of Konstantinovka, the battle has reached a moment of extraordinary gravity. More than 600 enemy fighters, among them elite units and foreign mercenaries, are now trapped in what could become the largest encirclement since this war began. This is more than a battlefield victory. It exposes painful fractures within the enemy alliance and signals a hidden surge in foreign involvement that officials scramble to deny. Yet, as mainstream coverage remains muted or evasive, the ability to shape the story drifts into the hands of those who refuse to accept silence. Your awareness, your questions, and your urge to seek out what is concealed, these have real power. When information is withheld, what the world believes is shaped not by reality, but by the deliberate gaps left in the record. At such a critical crossroads, every detail becomes significant. Whoever controls the narrative will ultimately mold how this episode is judged and what it means for the region's future. Will the silence persist, or will transparency and honest debate force the truth into the open? In the end, your engagement, your voice, your scrutiny, your demand for clarity helps counter distortion and holds every actor accountable. As the world holds its breath, your part in seeking the truth is vital. The outcome should belong to facts, not to filtered myths. So what can you do now, as a viewer, a citizen, or a concerned observer? First, question the silences. When an event of this scale goes unreported, ask why. Seek out alternative sources, compare reports, and look for patterns in what is omitted as much as in what is shown. Remember the lessons of past conflicts, from the information blackout at Chernobyl to the hidden casualties in the Gulf War, where silence shaped history as powerfully as any bomb or bullet. Second, demand accountability. Reach out to media organizations, policymakers, and public figures. Insist on transparency, especially when the stakes are so high. When enough people refuse to accept silence, the pressure for honest reporting becomes impossible to ignore. Third, support those who risk exposing the truth. Independent journalists, whistleblowers, and local witnesses are often the only ones willing to break through the wall of censorship. Their courage deserves your attention and, when possible, your protection. And finally, remember that history is not written only by the victors, but by those who refuse to let the truth be buried. Whether in the frozen trenches of Konstantinovka or the echo chambers of distant capitals, the facts matter. Only by insisting on clarity can we prevent the next disaster, and perhaps help shape a future built on understanding, not on silence. The battle near Konstantinovka is not just a clash of arms. It is a test of honesty, resilience, and the world's willingness to face hard truths. The outcome, on the ground and in the realm of information, will echo for years to come. The next chapter depends on whose story is heard. Make sure your voice is among them.